Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the North Fair Oaks Community Council meeting for the month of May 2019. Mitzi, if we can go ahead with roll, that would be great.
Of course. Chair Everardo Rodriguez.
Here.
Vice Chair Beatriz Cerillo.
Here.
Councilmember Rosario Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Lopez. Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Jennifer Reese. Youth Member Frances Santos. Alternative Youth Member Esmeralda Rosales.
Thank you, Mitzi. Item number 2 will be public comment. Anyone may speak up to 2 minutes on any topics not on the agenda tonight. If you wish to do so, please fill out a speaker's slip, which would be provided at the table by the entrance. The council may not discuss or take any action on items not on the agenda tonight. I don't see any public comment, so we'll move on ahead with the presentation regarding the sheriff's quarterly update. Presentation by Captain Christina Corpus. Welcome.
Good evening, council members, Deputy County Manager Ileana Rodriguez, county staff, and community members. My name is Christina Corpus, and I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Office, and I oversee the law enforcement services for North Fair Oaks. So tonight, I'm going to report out on police services from January through March of 2019. So again, this will update the North Fair Oaks Council on crime organizational performance and community outreach initiatives. So if you can see, our Part 1 crimes are a universal standard upon which crime is measured throughout the United States. Part 1 crimes are comprised of homicide, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, larceny, and auto theft. So the graph there is to show you that in the first quarter, we actually had a reduction and decrease of crime rates, specifically with violent crimes, in comparison to 2018. So in regards to rape, we went down by 1 in comparison to 2018. The robberies went down from 6 of 2018 to 2 for this quarter, 2019. Assaults went down by 2. Our burglaries remained the same. Larceny went up by 9 cases, and our vehicle theft went up by 7 cases. So again, this is just to show you where we went down in the percentages in the violent crimes, and then residential crimes went down, but we did go up in commercial burglaries, and 2 of those commercial burglaries were committed by the same suspect, which we were able to arrest and book into custody. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the citations in regards to parking, moving, and bicycle violations. So, we continue to see the same issues with more people living under one home, under one roof, and we have multiple cars. So we continue with the education to the community, but we do receive complaints from residents in regards to vehicles and citations. So we are enforcing, but when we can educate and just give warnings, we do so. So they are up from last year. And we've also, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but the moving citations, so we've noticed an increase in speeders, an increase in vehicles not stopping for pedestrians. We're in the crosswalks. So we have been doing some enforcement throughout North Fair Oaks, especially around the schools, and I'll get into that a little bit more into my presentation. So again, we continue, when we see the crime trends, we, evaluate our responses and see what we can do better and enhance what we're doing currently. So proactive patrol, really saturation in areas where we see a crime increase. You know, we always work at engaging the community, and we do that through our community barbecues. We do that through our coffee with the community. We recently started doing cocoa with deputies, and so we go out to the schools and provide hot chocolate and pastries for the students in the morning to get them engaged and have them have conversations with us. Again, with our Care On program and our SAL program, and our community policing efforts, we really try and engage the community. I am going to highlight a complex investigation that I wanted to talk about. So I'll talk about that just a little bit later in the presentation, because it's something that was it was a pretty impactful case that we were able to resolve. So these are our clearance rates. So what happens is that once we get a case and we either have an arrest or we have leads, our detective bureau works at clearing these cases. So I can just read off some stats. In 2018, there were 25 rapes that were cleared, and in 2014 so far, 2019, the percentage is 14%. Robbery was 50% clearance rate, and now we're at 166 clearance rate for 2019. So we are doing a better job, especially when with the improvement of technology and just the efforts of the detectives. So we conducted some, between April 19th and May 10th, we conducted some targeted enforcement for pedestrians, pedestrian-related violations in various locations in North Fair Oaks, and then again around some of the schools. And we did a lot of education surrounded that, but we did give 89 citations for vehicles not stopping for pedestrians in the crosswalk. We gave 20 cell phone violations, 18 for insurance, 8 for seatbelts, 1 for speeding, 5 for unlicensed driver, and then 9 were miscellaneous. Out of all of these citations, we did not tow anybody's vehicle. So this is the case that I wanted to update you. It's back from 2014, so I'll just quickly read through it. On August 12, 2014, a single mother left her 18-month-old son, Dante, in the care of her boyfriend, Marco Antonio Alvarado Cisneros, while she went to work. Later that evening, Marco Antonio Alvarado Cisneros called 911 to report Dante was not breathing and was unresponsive. As deputies and paramedics arrived on scene, Alvarado Cisneros told them Dante had fallen off of the bed and had a seizure. Dante was transported to the hospital, and a CAT scan was performed, which revealed that he had extensive brain damage. Tragically, Dante passed away the next morning. The San Mateo County Sheriff's Office detectives Daniel Haas and Efrain Zaidi were assigned to this case. An autopsy revealed that Dante had numerous injuries, including a massive supradural hematoma, adult bite marks on his body, and severe bruising. This case was extremely difficult and emotionally draining, especially for the lead detectives who were fathers of young children themselves. Detectives Haas and Zaidi were determined to bring the person that committed this unimaginable, horrific crime against an innocent child to justice. They worked countless hours and turned over every stone possible. They were challenged as Dante's mother continued to live with Alvarado Cisneros and had a child with him. In September 2017, Dante's mother reported numerous incidents of domestic violence, kidnapping, and robbery by Alvarado Cisneros. He was subsequently arrested, and the investigation led to his arrest for the murder of Dante. On April 19, 2019, after 4.5 years of this investigation, a jury found Alvarado Cisneros guilty of felony involuntary manslaughter and felony assault on a child resulting in death. He is currently awaiting sentencing. So that case is just, I just wanted to highlight it as it took us 4.5 years, but they never gave up. And he is now awaiting sentencing. So again, this is just some of the community engagement that we do. As I've spoken about it before, we do our parenting classes, we do our neighborhood watch programs, reading with the kids at the library, coffee with the community. We have community academies, parent projects, youth academies, and then again, community barbecues to just kind of glaze over what we do to engage the community. And we're always looking for other methods to engage the community as well. Does anybody have any questions?
If council members have any questions, please go ahead.
First, I want to say thank you for everything that you do, all the department. And I see that your data that you have there, I see, and I was talking with other council members, that we see that crime is it's less now this year. We have seen that. And we have seen that the officers are patrolling more North Fair Oaks. And I have a question. Now that we have closing Fair Oaks, but we're going to have more schools because charters are coming,
Right.
more traffic,
Yes.
everything. Do you have a plan that how you're going to deal with all this traffic and people that are coming next school year?
Yes, so we have reached out to KIP, the charter school that's coming into into Fair Oaks School, and we have a meeting scheduled for next week to talk about the impact and how traffic and how the shuttles are going to impact the neighborhood. So we're going to strategize with them and discuss. And I can update the council once we have a plan in place in regards to how we're going to deal with the overflow of the amount of vehicles that will be coming into the neighborhood during pickup time, drop-off time and pickup time.
And another question, have you, do you have more gun detectors recently put them on North Fair Oaks?
We actually have, we use a system called ShotSpotter that picks up whenever there's either some type of gunfire or fireworks. So we're actually working on the campaign for the 4th of July now. So we will be distributing door hangers, both in English and Spanish, that will discuss the penalties and the dangers around fireworks. We will be putting up banners. The school resource officers will be going to the schools and talking to the kids about the dangers of fireworks. And we're actually working with our gang intelligence unit in regards to just some issues around the 4th of July in regards to illegal fireworks and celebratory gunfire. Yes.
Also, I think I read that now the department, they're going to charge, if they see that, for example, in 18 Hurlingham, it is marked by that somebody is playing that fireworks, you're going to charge the owner
So we,
of the house or...
What we try to do is oftentimes, we'll get the notification, and when we get there, people run and hide. So we will have a report out in regards to where, and we actually have a mapping of the issues where we've had in the past. So I will have extra patrol out Our hope is that we catch the perpetrators, the people that are actually igniting the illegal fireworks. So that's kind of what our plan is at this point.
Finally, I want to say thank you again for all that you do, and not just in North Fair Oaks, but in the county, because last Thursday, I think you have the event for the sheriffs. I was there. It was very nice.
Thank you for
coming. It was the first time, right?
Yes.
So, and they said they're going to continue to doing it. That was very nice, that they recognize the labor of the officers.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being there.
Go ahead, Blair.
I just want to echo my fellow council member. The barbecue events are even better than Coffee with a Cop. You had that pickup basketball game at St. Francis Center, and they had cheeseburgers. And I talked my buddy into, like, let's watch a basketball game, and it was cool. And then hot dogs at the mural thing. Not everyone's into coffee. And people were not intimidated. Everyone was, it breaks down the barrier between law enforcement and the community, and there's a hot dog there. So, yeah, kudos.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First one is related to fireworks. Do you guys have, I understand that Redwood City has this policy where they instituted, I believe last year, assessing fines to those they caught, the people they caught, cracking fireworks or something. Do you guys have the same sort of policy at the San Mateo Sheriff's?
It's actually, it's a penal code that we would charge them with. Okay. And then depending on the amount that we find or that they have, then that would depend on if it would lead to an arrest, or we would have to call out our bomb unit, because with fireworks, especially if they're commercial grade, the deputy that's on patrol would not be handling it. We would summons our bomb unit to come out and then confiscate the amount, depending if it's a large amount, right? So they would be penalized either, through the criminal system.
Great. The other question was in regards to parking and having lots of vehicles, I guess trying to find parking spaces. Sometimes some cars, I've noticed that they either park on the curb or they block, the curbside, the pedestrian walkway, essentially by parking under driveways. Is this an issue that is penalized also, or?
Yes. So whenever somebody's impeding the right-of-way of a pedestrian or parking on top of the sidewalk, they would be cited. I mean, we do go and knock on the door and try to see if somebody answers and if there's a responsible person that can move the vehicle. And then we do give them a firm warning. Otherwise, they would be cited because it does, then that causes a mother with her child walking to go into the street, which is dangerous. So we do address those things, and we do try to have the person move their vehicle, but we don't. If no one answers the door, if there's not someone that can move the vehicle, then they are cited.
And finally, just for clarification. During your presentation, you mentioned the clearance rates for crimes. Were these on crimes that had been committed in the past, or just clearing out current crimes?
Right.
I mean, accelerating the pace?
Yeah, so some of them are crimes that happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. It's just the amount of, maybe we didn't get a hit. There's different technology that we utilize. So some of these cases, the clearance rates could reflect a case that maybe was from a few years ago. And, we're always, again, looking at different forms of technology to help us. And, our deputies, we're providing them with more training so they can, swab crime scenes and, the technology is so much better than it was even 5 years ago, where now we're starting to get more hits on and returns on some of the evidence and that we've collected.
Thank you. Anybody else? Looks like that's it. Thank you very much, Captain.
Yeah, and then I just for the community, we will be having a human trafficking workshop on June 10th, and that's at 3151 Edison. The flyers are in the back. We are also having a Healthy Homes and Relationships workshop, and that's going to be on June 25th. And then we're actually having a family event at Garfield Community School on June 27th. And we were going to take people up to Edgewood Park to go on a hike. So, we also have Star Camp. So, if anyone knows anyone that would like to attend, and we normally try to get kids that are between 5th and 8th grade, and we take them on a 4-day excursion, and it's a camping excursion. We do a lot of fun activities with the kids, and it's really to reinforce the relationship between law enforcement and the kids.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And is there any public comment on this item?
Through the chair, there's one public comment.
Oh, okay.
Juan Carlos Prado.
Good evening, Council. My name is Juan Carlos Prado. I'm a lifelong resident of Redwood City, and for many years I was on your side. Over 20 years ago, I was a legislative aide for, back then, Supervisor Rose Jacobs Gibson, 20 years ago. I've since then been working as a high school teacher at Woodside High School for almost 20 years. But I'm here in the capacity as a resident. I live a few blocks from here, 556 Warrington Avenue. And I'm very concerned about fireworks on Hurlingham. It's an ongoing occurrence almost every weekend. I'm also very concerned about parking on North Side. I know this is an ongoing concern, North Side Avenue, which is right here by the railroad tracks. The fact that we have green parking for 20 minutes, but there's vehicles parked there all day. So obviously there's a lack of enforcement there. Clearly they're not parking there for 20 minutes, and it's a chaotic situation there, particularly in the morning when there's a rush hour in the morning, people going to work, to school, and in the evening, but the vehicles are parked there for hours at a time, and certainly not 20 minutes. So I'd like to see if there's a more, if the sheriffs could do a little bit more in that particular section. I know that the Board of Supervisors is looking at that. I don't know what the outcome of that meeting was at Northside Avenue, if they're going to continue to allow parking there. I asked about this tonight, but they're going to get back to me on email regarding this matter. So at any rate, my concern as a resident on Warrington is the fireworks, and I'm concerned as summer approaches, there's going to be a lot more activity. Lately, for some reason, the last few weeks, I've seen a lot of young people on dirt bikes, on motorcycles that are not, they have no license plate. They're like motocross dirt bikes. So if there was more patrolling, I would hope that the deputies would address that matter, because they're not vehicles that should be on the road. Thank you.
Thanks very much. If I may just add a brief comment about these two specific issues. First, on the parking issue, I would call the parking hotline number. Even if nothing happens, you know, automatically during that day, the fact that these problems get reported, I believe that they help the patrol to be more mindful of that specific area. The more complaints you get about a particular area, the more patrolling you tend to get. And the other thing about the fireworks, it feels like, at least to me, it feels like there needs to be a community-wide effort to educate the public and to let them know that fireworks are illegal, and that there may be a fine or a charge if people don't comply. Because I think it is fairly recent that this policy went into effect, so a lot of people still get by the old culture knowledge, I guess. So, yeah, please.
So you can even call 363-4911, and we'll go there. It's if there's those issues that are ongoing on North Side, because if we don't hear about them, then obviously if I don't hear about them, then I don't know it's a problem, and so I can give direction to pay more attention to that area or do more, maybe assign more people to that area to help with that issue and try to eradicate it. And then along with the, we are going to have extra enforcement out for the 4th of July. And, if you hear fireworks, please call us so we can, go into that neighborhood and at least patrol more. And what we will be doing is we'll be doing a PSA and putting it out on social media. So what I can do is I can email it to the council, and maybe you could put it on your Facebook page as well, but in English and Spanish. So just to really kind of, we're going to be doing a lot of outreach surrounded around that, going to the churches. So really trying to give, also advise the community that they can call us, and we will go to that location. And we do have an idea of where the fireworks have been more active. So our enforcement will really be dedicated to those specific areas.
And I will add that the officers doing the parking enforcement are quite good. I've experienced that, when I've the times that I've reported a few issues, they're pretty responsive. So, thank you very much again. We'll move on to item number 4. We'll have a presentation regarding the community collaboration for children's success. It'll be an update for this ongoing project, and a presentation by Maeve Johnson. Well, actually, she's not here, right?
She's not here.
Yeah.
I'm Shireen Malakavzali. I'm a stand-in for my team member, Maeve Johnston. I manage the Health Policy and Planning Program at County Health. Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, Vice Chair Lopez, the full council, and county staff for having us. This will be, I think, our 3rd presentation on this initiative. So I'm hoping to fly through some of the background material and just get to where is really the important issues at this point, which have been the top identified issues around children's success or barriers to children's success in North Fairhouse Redwood City area, as well as the top strategies that the community's identified to overcome those barriers. We have been leading this collaborative effort called Community Collaboration for Children's Success on behalf of a multi-agency effort with Human Services Agency, County Health in particular, Behavioral Health, with Juvenile Probation, County Office of Education, and First Five. We started this initiative, if you recall, when our county manager's office recognized that many of the youth clients were coming from very similar locations across the county, and wanted to understand what could we do to prevent children from entering some of our high-intensity programming, like child welfare, such as juvenile probation or juvenile justice, or substance abuse mental health programming that really makes it difficult for children to succeed. And we decided to move forward in this multi-agency collaborative with a lot of our county partners that are working and focused on children and children's success overall. We wanted to bring a trauma-informed approach and collaborative approach to the process, and also really make sure that the work and the plan was informed by impacted youth and families on the ground. As we looked at the data, looking at where our clients, youth clients in the high-intensity programming lived and came from, as well as looking at some community risk factors such as high rates of suspension, low third grade reading level, amongst other indicators, and then also looking at where there were lots of assets in communities. So we didn't want to just go where there was a high need, but wanted to go where there was high need, but also a lot of community efforts underway to overcome the need, and yet they were unable to fully meet the threshold of need. And we identified 4 locations, one in Daly City, neighborhoods in South San Francisco, North Fair Oaks into Redwood City, and then the East Palo Alto, and began a trauma-informed community planning process in each of those 4 neighborhoods that's almost all complete at this point. North Fair Oaks was one of our first communities that we completed, so we wanted to come back to you and share the results. We spoke with 257 youth and caregivers through focus groups and surveys. We had 10 community champions who really were the bridge to digging deep into impacted communities, who really were quite amazing leaders. We also held 4 neighborhood leadership meetings, of which about 80 or so participants participated in. Your chair, Rodriguez, has been very engaged in this process, which we're really appreciative of, as well as the sheriff's office, amongst others. Once we spoke with them, the main questions we were asking were, what are the top issues that are causing challenges to children's success, and how do we overcome them? As we look deeper, one of the top issues were around affordability and cost of living, which I don't think will surprise many of us. We learned that about 17% can't afford basic needs like medicine and transportation, and about 1 in 5 don't have stable housing. Number 2, they spoke of structural and institutional racism, and of those that expressed discrimination, the youth, we were really surprised to find that over 50% felt that they were either profiled or discriminated against by teachers or childcare providers. 46% in their own neighborhoods, by stores in the neighborhood, by their neighbors themselves, and almost 40% noted discrimination by law enforcement. We found about almost a quarter of youth never or rarely talked to a supportive adult about what they're thinking or feeling, which we felt was pretty high, a quarter of youth that were surveyed. And a supportive adult could be a parent, a teacher, a mentor. About 8% of the youth said they never or rarely felt their parents or caregivers supported their education, and another 12% said they felt that it was only sometimes that their parents or caregivers supported their education. Another top issue was access to resources. This was really broad. There were language barriers around lots of different resources that they wanted to access. They felt that resources weren't always clear where they were. They weren't always open during the times they were available. They spoke of mental health, substance abuse, lack of childcare, and also legal support systems. And some of this, you'll hear in the strategies next, that some of it was also around how you navigate some of these systems and just knowing and understanding whether they exist or not in the community. Finally, the 5th issue that they prioritized was the issue of safety. Almost 1/3 of youth said they never or rarely felt safe in their community. Then we said, well, given that these are the top issues you've identified, what strategies do you think would help overcome some of the barriers in order to help you achieve success for the children that live in our community? And one of the top issues, I know this is difficult to read, it's all in the documents that I've shared with you. I'll go over it, and the audience also has them in their executive summary. There was 10 issues that the neighborhood leadership group, as well as those that provided input, prioritized. One was around living wage opportunities, and you'll see wages come up again around really a need to increase household income in number 9. They wanted more institutions to use data to lower disparities and address disproportionality. They wanted mental health supports in schools in particular, making it easier to utilize supportive services, whether it was the hours or the times or the locations. Expanding subsidized preschool or universal preschool was a key issue. Developing a youth advisory boards where youth would be able to share, youth with lived experience could share and take leadership in developing the types of programs that ultimately would be serving them. They spoke about expanding violence prevention methods and programming. They wanted more mentorship opportunities. And finally, this notion that really needing peer-to-peer support in order for community to connect better with services, understanding what is out there, a promotora model, as we call it in county health. As we close down the planning process and really highlighted the data that identified the top issues and top needs, we've been thinking about how do we implement this work. And just actually yesterday, we brought together a smaller implementation group that Chair Rodriguez participated in as well, where we discussed how do we take this information, the strategies that have been identified, and begin to identify how do we program, plan, collaborate, bring a collective impact model to our work in order to be able to advance the needs and that the 260 or so folks have identified for children's success. We're also working with our partners in Human Services Agency, First Five, County Office of Education, Juvenile Probation, really to see whether we can realign existing resources to better address the data that's been shared here, and also jointly pursuing funding together. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and see if you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much. Do council members have any questions? Please go ahead.
Hello. When I see data that reflects limited resources or engagement in youth leadership, to me it says that there does exist groups who engage in youth leadership. So I think it isn't that there's not anything, but how do we build those bridges to what already exists? Because there's a lot out there. And sometimes when we do these surveys and it comes back and they answer never or I never, it's like, then we're not doing our job at informing our community exactly what exists and what this data also is showing us how to access this information that already exists. So it kind of like, it's very clear that we have to build more connections, more bridges, more collaborative efforts to make sure that these initiatives, these groups, these things that already exist are freely found, I guess. Because sometimes, like you said, what I understood is that they're embedded, and sometimes you do the first step and second step, but it isn't until maybe the fifth or sixth step that you really get the information you want. So how to make it easier to find also.
That's right. I want to also draw your attention in the full packets that you have. We also did ask all the survey participants to identify assets in the community that they were aware of so that we could start to create a list. We also talked to the neighborhood leadership groups about that, so you have a map and a list of those in your packets. And the final strategy around the promotora and the peer-to-peer was directly related to what you were speaking about. Many people in the neighborhood leadership groups were aware of some programming, others were not aware of it, even amongst providers.
Go ahead, Blair.
I'm looking at the map of where you focus, and it's like an L-shaped or a purple thing with Taft Elementary and Fair Oaks Elementary, and it doesn't cross Middlefield. I actually live on the west side near the Siena Youth Center, St. Francis Center, and I feel like there's a lot of services and a lot of engagement positively in that particular neighborhood. That's probably why you didn't identify them as a work area.
The place that's purple is both high need and high readiness. So it's possible that there were places that had a lot of assets, but they had less clients coming from them.
Oh.
That said, I would say these are a little bit arbitrary lines. As much data as we could possibly pull together to give us accurate information is represented there. And actually each layer you'll find on our website, we have a story map that can take you through each layer to show clients and in juvenile justice clients where they live in child neglect cases, for example. So you can look at each layer that creates that index. But the broader takeaway I would say is that we focus not only just in those blocks, but for youth and caregivers that were in the larger hashtagged area, because we recognize that even if one lives in one area, their neighborhood, they may go to school in another area, they might access resources somewhere else. So we had a broader catchment area, but we wanted to focus in and around the places where there were a lot of challenges, but also a lot of assets to build from.
A couple of questions. My first question is whether these the statistics related to structural and institutional racism will be shared with all county agencies that perhaps may or may not be perpetrating some of it. Because I think that would be great for them to have, the statistics and the information that you already have that is very useful.
Yeah.
Perhaps to reshape, how they distribute their services. And I don't know, maybe this is part of the process that you are thinking about, proceeding, but I just wanted to make that plug in. Then going back to what Councilmember Beatrice was saying about the resources, it occurs to me, after before the meeting and after the meeting, I kept pondering about it, and I thought that perhaps there is a need for the creation of charts of services, not only for users, so that they know, okay, if you need these, go here. If you don't need these, go there, etc. But also for county services offered, so that there is inter-office referral, because I'm sure that, a lot of county departments know what other services are available. Some may not, and I think it would be great if there can be a clear path of referrals for when somebody encounters, a child that has been abused or something. So going back to what Beatrice was saying about making sure that the resources that are already in existence, that are well utilized.
Yeah. Yeah, just to respond to those good comments, we have been certainly sharing with the agencies that have been involved in the planning process, Human Services, Probation, County Office of Education, First Five, and Behavioral Health. But we do think we would like to share it more broadly. We've been slowly sharing it with other, for example, with Daly City, we shared it with the police department because some of the data came out with questions about their engagement. So there will be other institutions that we'll also want to share this information with. We've also been thinking about, and we spoke briefly about it at the implementation meeting, but if there is a core group that would like to, we could hold a convening that would not only share the data with a broader group of people, but also bring different institutions to also share the kinds of resources that are available to address some of the challenges. Therefore, meeting one of the barriers that have been identified, but also enabling more of a clear connection between the community and some of the institutions that are already providing the services, and to hear where there might be gaps or challenges to accessing those services that already exist. And then finally, your note about the clear referrals and in many ways sort of a directory, I think that is, service provision is a newer area for me, but over the last 2 years in this project, I've learned so much about it and the complexity of the referral systems. We don't have a database, a shared database across agencies, and that does cause some challenges for us. There are some legal and otherwise reasons why that doesn't happen, but the lack of ability for us to clearly share all that information does create challenges. But as far as the referrals, if a provider certainly notices any potential neglect or abuse issues, they are required to notify.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with questions?
If there's no other questions, I'll just ask that if there are other groups you would like us to share this information with and do a presentation for, we would love to share this information. We feel like the 260 people who shared their views, we'd like to make sure as many people hear that. And we will be translating the executive summary in Spanish for North Fair Oaks, as well as some other languages in the other regions. And we would love to share through Mitzi, we'll share with you those as many as you would like to disperse with your communities.
Great. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Appreciate that. And is there any public comment? I don't think there is. So we will go on to item number 5. Which is a presentation regarding commercial mixed use, CMU3, and industrial mixed use in North Fair Oaks, and the rezoning, with a presentation by Mr. Joel Leclerc. Welcome, from Planning Services.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez and council members, county staff. My name is Joe Leclerc, Planning Services Manager with the county. We're here to present the staff's recommendation on the commercial and industrial mixed-use rezoning in North Fair Oaks, the last two rezoning areas in North Fair Oaks to implement the community plan. So tonight we'll talk about phases 2B and 3 and the new rules that will implement the community plan. So the areas that we'll be focusing on tonight are these green areas, which are for industrial mixed use, and the red area, which is commercial mixed use. And those are phases 2B and 3. So we've been engaged in a very active community process over the last year and a half. And you can see the series of meetings that we held, community meetings and community workshops, and we had a workshop with you last week, and so we're before you tonight to make our recommendation on this before we proceed to presentations before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. So the topics that each of the zoning districts cover include, the uses that can be allowed, the heights, density, lot coverage, those kinds of development controls, setbacks, step backs, how much parking is to be provided, and the design standards that buildings have to meet in order to be permitted under this new zoning. So the area that we'll focus on first is the commercial mixed-use area that's being rezoned from industrial and resident or neighborhood commercial to commercial mixed-use 3. And that's along Middlefield Road, bounded by like San Mateo and Douglas and First and Fifth and Edison. So that's the area we'll be focusing on first. And The uses that would be allowed in this area are, one, to focus on commercial mixed use along Middlefield Road to create that neighborhood shopping street that we have now, but we want to maintain into the future. And then off Middlefield Road, commercial mixed use would be allowed, and as would residential, but anything other than commercial mixed use would require a use permit on Middlefield Road. We also are making provision for office and light industrial, but only with use permits and in very limited fashion. And then some of the current uses like auto repair and body shops will be continued to stay, but they'll become non-conforming uses that can stay as long as they like, but there wouldn't be any opportunity to establish new uses of that type in the zone. So this just depicts that concept of concentrating, commercial uses on the ground floor on Middlefield Road. Now, the other rules, if you will, or policies that are part of this zone affect what heights buildings can be. So they can be 4 to 6 stories. So that's 50, 60, or 70 feet. I'll show you a map in a minute that shows where those heights are allowed. The densities can range from 80 to 120 units to the acre, and the floor to area ratios vary based on the uses, except for residential, which does not require, does not have a FAR. The bulk of the buildings are controlled by the density of the number of units that can be allowed by site area. So, as I said, the areas have varying height possibilities. As you may recall, the plan identified this quarter mile within a proposed transit stop here at Middlefield and junction with the Dumbarton Rail. So anything within a quarter mile of that can go to a higher density, 120 units to the acre. And the building heights in this dark blue can be up to 6 stories to accommodate that. And in those areas of the neighborhood where you would join residential neighborhoods, step backs are required so that and I'll show that in a minute. But the shorter heights, 50 feet here along Edison between 5th and 1st, I'm sorry, between 2nd and 5th, and then this south side of Middlefield Road would be a maximum of 60 feet in height, again with a step back adjoining the neighborhood. So these show this idea of step back south side of Middlefield Road. A ground floor parking could extend to the property line, but the building would have to step back or be set back 10 feet. Max height 60 feet, but the building most likely on the south side of Middlefield, given the small size of the sites, would be probably 3-story and 40 feet. For those taller buildings, 60 and 70 feet tall, you can either do an 8-foot setback or a 10-foot step back at the above the first floor, and then another step back at 60 feet, or it could be for an 8-foot setback building, it could be at the first floor, and then with parking, the goal was to ensure that all projects park themselves. So the standards in the zoning that we provided to you are aimed at achieving that. The design standards that we've modified in Chapter 29, they were written for this EMU 1, 2, and NMU ECR zoning we presented to you almost 2 years ago. Were modified to simplify the standards, to make them more objective in response to requirements from state law, and mainly but from a substantive standpoint, they haven't really been changed. And these are the kinds of buildings that we foresee these rules generating, anything from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6-story buildings with ground floor commercial, or in the cases when you're off of Middlefield Road where we're not really encouraging retail, you would have perhaps residential all the way to the ground floor, and this is the kind of architecture that we think would fit nicely in the neighborhood. Now, the next zoning district I want to present to you is the industrial mixed-use zoning, and this is focused in the area around Spring and Bay Road, and as well along Edison. And there are two zoning districts. One of them, which is the M1 Edison NFO, which is focused along Edison and Northside, has a more constrained range of uses that are possible in there because of the proximity to residential. And throughout that district, residential is allowed. In the other M1 NFO district, it's light industrial uses, but with a allowance for residential in certain locations, but a broader range of industrial uses is allowed because the conflicts with adjoining residential are not present, and live work is something that would be permitted throughout the district. So this depicts the areas of the M1 NFO where housing would be allowed. These are the M1 Edison NFO, and housing is allowed throughout. So the proposed uses are lighter industrial uses that don't present the kinds of heavy externalities that would impact neighbors, and so you can see the mix of uses that are allowed in the district. 40-foot height, maximum 80-foot lot coverage, range of setbacks depending on proximity to residential, and FARs also a range. And again, everything ranging from a regular industrial building to mixed use, where you start to see a little bit nicer architectural treatments, to live work, where living and working in the same building is allowed. And I already mentioned this in the design standards, so our next steps are to present this to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, and we're here tonight seeking your recommendation to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors that they adopt this zoning. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the public. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentation, Mr. Leclerc. If there are any questions from council members, I know we had an in-depth presentation last week, but if you have further questions, please go ahead. Looks like we have no questions. And is there any public comment in this matter? I don't think there is. And so I guess we have council action on this item. Is that correct? Because I don't see it noted here.
Yeah, through the chair, it looks like it wasn't identified on the agenda as an action item, but since it was properly noticed to be on the agenda, if it sounds like the planning department would like you to take a vote and make a recommendation, so you can go ahead and do that.
Sure. If anybody, any of the council members can have a motion, I'll entertain a motion. And just to clarify, this would be a motion to recommend that the commercial mixed use, as stated in item number 5 on the agenda, is either supported by the council or not.
Well, we'd be happy to bring this back to you at another meeting if that's what you'd prefer. But we did present this extensively at a study session last week, and we've had quite a bit of public outreach as we outlined for you last week and again this evening. I will say, based on the response that we received in the community, there was quite a bit of interest and support for advancing this project, as well as we were responsive to the comments that we received from the community in the course of the public process that we conducted. We had about 7 public meetings over that 12, 14-month period, and I think it's safe to say that the response was generally positive to the direction. So it's unfortunate that the agenda didn't reflect a desire for action, but I don't feel it would be outside the spirit of the process.
Go ahead, Blair.
I just want to say it's kind of like a big thing to swallow, and it's going to the Planning Commission. I'm not sure whether I support it. I don't oppose it. Could we, motion to pass it on to the Planning Commission without comment, for or against? Or do we have to say that we like it or don't like it?
So the motion would be to either make a recommendation as that we support it as stated, or that we don't, for the purposes of tonight's meeting. Is that correct?
I believe it.
And through the chair,
Yeah.
just talking with the planner, Will Gibson here, if it's a majority of the council's desire, you could make a motion recommending that the item move forward to the Planning Commission without a council position in terms of approval or denial.
Okay.
So sort of have 3 options on the table. I think you could recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed rezoning, recommend that the Planning Commission not adopt the proposed rezoning, or recommend that this move forward to the Planning Commission with no position taken by the North Fair Oaks Community Council.
That's one I was kind of thinking.
With our one moving on to the Planning Commission without a recommendation?
Without recommendation.
Okay. Do other council members feel that way, or do they have opinions as to the other options?
My opinion is to make the motion to recommend.
Recommend? Okay. How do you feel, Jennifer? Beatrice?
Yeah, I think the same.
Recommend? Okay. All right. So if I can have a motion from any of you
Yes.
to recommend?
Yes, I want to make the motion to recommend the proposed commercial mixed use of an industrial mixed use on Edison and North Fair Oaks rezoning.
Just to clarify, the motion is to recommend approval of that
Yes,
rezoning?
to make the
Thank
motion
you.
of the approval, yes.
Thank you.
Do I get a second for that motion?
I'll second.
I have a second. And do we count the votes, Mitzi? Or
To debate the motion.
I'd recommend a roll call vote just because the discussion was a little bit confusing.
Okay. So, Everardo Rodriguez,
yes?
Vice Chair Beatriz Cerrillo, Councilmember Rosario Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Lopez, Councilmember Rosaura Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Blair Whitney,
No.
Councilmember Jennifer Reese, Youth Member Francis Santos.
Thank you, Mitzi. It looks like the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
And
very
good
much for your
evening.
work. And before we go on with the next item, I neglected to announce at the beginning that presentation regarding county's elder abuse prevention efforts would not be presented tonight. The presenter was unable to join us, unfortunately. So this will be carried on perhaps for the next monthly meeting or subsequent meetings. For item number 6 on the agenda, we do have an action for that item, correct? Okay, just making sure. The item is a recommendation regarding disposable food serviceware ordinance, presentation by Yoon Soo Lim, Resource Conservation Specialist from Solid Waste Management, San Mateo County. You can place it.
Hi.
Hello? Whoa, okay, I'm really on this time. Okay, good evening. I actually don't have a PowerPoint. Sometimes PowerPoints get in the way of me presenting, so I like to just verbally give you a presentation. So my name is Eun Soo Lim, and I'm the Senior Sustainability Coordinator for the Office of Sustainability with the County of San Mateo. And I'm here today to present to you an effort that the Office of Sustainability we're doing together in collaboration with the county's Environmental Health Services Division. And it's specifically to address our disposable food serviceware. So we're in the process of developing an ordinance targeting disposable food serviceware. And we have three main reasons why this is such a high priority item for the county right now. One of them is we are really trying to get away from plastics. As some of you may know, China last year, they basically shut the doors for collecting most of the mixed plastics, not just for California, not just for the United States, but for almost the entire world. And considering that California, we've been sending most of our mixed plastics to be recycled in China, that's a huge back step for us in terms of our sustainability goals. And now India has shut their doors, Vietnam has shut their doors. So what a lot of the waste facilities are doing throughout the county, including the one here that serves North Fair Oaks, they're collecting the mixed plastics, but they're sending it to the landfill right now. So it's really unfortunate. So there is definitely a need to address this issue. And there's also a safety issue. So the microplastics, you use it for 5 seconds, but it unfortunately lasts for potentially thousands of years. And they break down, they don't biodegrade, they just break down into smaller pieces. And there's been recent studies that found that these small plastic pieces called microplastics are actually in humans. They're found in humans. And the really scary part is that these small microplastics, they're sticky. So they attract toxins like mercury and other toxic chemicals. So you could imagine if it's found in our bodies, what harmful effects it will have. So there's definitely a need to address this issue from the health perspective. There's another objective, it's to meet the county's regional stormwater permit requirement. So by July 2022, we will need to virtually eliminate or have very, very little litter, visible litter on our streets. And that is a state mandate for almost all the local governments in the entire Bay Area. We have to meet that mandate in about 3 years. So these three objectives, 3 high priorities, it really brought the county departments together to propose this ordinance. And so who will this ordinance impact? So the target audience will be food facilities. And specifically, they are restaurants, farmers markets, food trucks. If you go to Safeway and they have the salad bar and you buy the food from the salad bar. So basically any food facility, any vendor that prepares and serves food to the public. So that is considered a food facility. So they will be impacted. And the ordinance will impact the food facilities in unincorporated San Mateo County. So I really want to be clear on that. It is not for the entire county. The county only has jurisdiction within unincorporated areas of San Mateo County. And the target items, again, disposable food serviceware. So they are usually one-time use items such as straws, bowls, plates, cups. If you go to Starbucks, buy a coffee cup, that's a disposable food serviceware. Napkins, condiment packets, the spill plugs, all those are defined as disposable food serviceware. And some of the provisions that are listed, that are detailed in the draft, in the proposed ordinance, the first one is styrofoam. So polystyrene, it will continue to be banned. It's already banned in the county, so it will continue to be banned as a disposable food serviceware. So accessories, so the little guys, like the straws, the condiment packets, napkins, the cocktail picks, the coffee stirrers, so they all can only be provided when requested by a customer or at a self-service station or at a dispenser for the customer to go and help themselves. And the reason for that is we're in a culture where if you go to a fast food restaurant or some kind of restaurant, you order something, and instead of you asking for some, like the little accessories, they automatically put all those accessories in the bag for you and just give it to you. But you don't need it. So you end up just tossing it into the garbage, or it ends up on the street. So it's a big waste. So this is a low-hanging fruit. So it's just using accessories when it's needed. The next provision is of the accessories, 4 specific accessories. So straws, stirrers, utensils, cocktail picks, as you see in the handout. So they have to be made from non-plastic compostable materials. And when I say non-plastic, we're very intentional. So they cannot be the traditional plastics that we've been using for years. And they cannot be the compostable plastics that are kind of the newer plastics made from cornstarch, but supposedly break down in a composting facility. So no plastics whatsoever. So what are some of the options that are available? It would be natural fiber-based materials such as paper, bamboo, sugarcane, and wheat stalk. And there are examples of that in the cup right there. That Councilmember Lopez, you could free to pass that down. So those accessories are the examples of acceptable accessories. And in terms of the big items, plates, bowls, cups, food trays, clamshells, they too have to be non-plastic. And on top of that, they have to be free of a toxic chemical called fluorinated chemicals. So these fluorinated chemicals are found in disposable food serviceware to make them water and grease proof. But there are also emerging research that says that they are very toxic for you. They cause different kinds of cancers, ADHD, obesity, a whole group of health ailments. So we're trying to get rid of those fluorinated chemicals that are toxic. And so how do you identify that an item is free of these fluorinated chemicals? If they are stamped and certified by an organization called Biodegradable Products Institute, then they are verified to not have these chemicals. And of course, we have exemptions. So aluminum, like aluminum foil that you wrap burritos around, so those are exempt because they can be recycled. And customers that require accommodations for medical reasons, they're also exempt. And if there is really no reasonably feasible food service alternative that meets the requirements of the ordinance that a food facility really needs, then they can submit an exemption application, and the Office of Sustainability staff will go over it. And if it's accepted, then they will have an exemption for up to a year. And then we'll have available on our office website a list of approved items for the food facilities for them to access so they could purchase the items. We're thinking of other educational outreach activities as well to reach out to all the food facilities. And then with that, I will wrap up. Any questions?
If council members have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
In the schools, the Redwood City schools, they are already implementing the stricter recycle guidelines in their food program. And it does take time, it does take education, but with the routine, now the students and staff people understand where certain things now go, as opposed to just one container and tossing everything in that one container as it was done in the past. So now there's several containers, and so you kind of have to look at the visuals, so to understand. And with practice, you start understanding, like where certain things go. But also, since we've been since the inception of the yearly cleanup, I've been doing it since its inception, since it started. A lot of these plastics are what we pick up in this yearly cleanup. The food container, the straws, the plasticware. As we go around our area cleaning it up, it's out there on our streets and everywhere. So,
absolutely.
So I'm glad to see that. And through education, we just need a lot of education, a lot of visuals to get into the practice and habit, because there's still many, many people buying bottled water in those regular plastic.
And I totally agree with you in that education and outreach is going to be our highest priority if this ordinance is passed. And we started developing, although it's not passed yet, we're planning ahead. And we're putting together some ideas for how to do more targeted outreach and education to all the food facilities in unincorporated San Mateo County, including providing them with technical assistance on what items to purchase. We're also thinking about doing like workshops, rotating workshops, where we'll invite vendors to come and bring their items, conforming items, and invite food facilities to come and talk to the vendors, look at the different items, get the vendors' contact information, and even take some samples to their restaurants back home so they could test it out and just start getting acclimated. And if the ordinance is passed, there's going to be a grace period, so about a year. So the provisions will not go into effect for 1 year to give food facilities time to use up their existing inventory that won't be in compliance. And it'll also give our office time to do the proper education and outreach that's needed.
Go ahead, Blair.
So North Fair Oaks is one of the less affluent areas in San Mateo County. And I've noticed, like, we're the petri dish to try progressive stuff. What other jurisdictions in the county have this ordinance already?
Great question. So in the county, the only city that has an ordinance that's similar to this is Pacifica. And they adopted an ordinance just focusing on stirrers, straws, and utensils. So those cannot be plastic. Very similar to what's in the provision now for our county. But that they're very limited to the accessories, and they adopted it late last year. Other than Pacifica, there are no other cities in the county that have adopted it. I should also mention that although this ordinance is really targeted towards unincorporated, I have started discussions with all the other 20 cities in the county to see if they're interested in adopting a similar or the same ordinance within their jurisdictions, because ideally we'd want something uniform and consistent across the entire county to prevent confusion, to make it easy for everybody. So we're in discussions, I'm in discussions with the cities, and there's actually a lot of interest, and their eyes are on us. They're looking to us to see what happens in the future when we bring this to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, yeah, I saw with the flavored tobacco that San Carlos and some other jurisdictions followed what the county did first. I have a question about the what was it?
Biodegradable Products Institute?
Yeah, bioplastics, because I know people have been trying to come up with something that does compost, and the cornstarch and all that other stuff, and you're saying that it's actually dangerous because of chemicals or something, or what's wrong with it?
So we've looked into, so they're called they have a few names. Bioplastics is one. Another name that they go by is compostable plastics. So that cup, so that is compostable plastic. That's made from cornstarch.
Okay.
So one of the problems is when a regular person or any person looks at that plastic cup, they're going to think that that's plastic. So when they're done drinking their beverage in 5 minutes, a lot of folks, they end up putting that into the blue bin instead of the green bin. And what happens is, so people aren't aware of how to sort them properly. And it's really because, well, there are a few reasons, because the manufacturers, they don't have a standard way of labeling them. And there's also greenwashing. There are a lot of companies that say the misleading things like, oh, biodegradable. So when a regular person reads, oh, it's biodegradable, they think it's compostable, so they put it into the green bin. But it's not compostable. It should actually go into the blue bin. So basically, people will look at that, think that's plastic, put it into the blue bin, rendering that entire blue bin contaminated, and the contents of that blue bin actually ends up going to the landfill. So there's a lot of confusion by people on how to sort. I don't blame them because they're confusing. If you look at the bottom of that cup, there are like 5 different symbols and like letters and numbers. People aren't going to take 5 minutes to look at and decipher the symbols. We have to make things simple for people to follow. So by getting rid of plastics and really pushing for things that look like wood, paper, we're trying to simplify and make things easy for everybody. And another problem with the compostable plastics, they only break down into compost in a composting facility, industrial composting facility. So if you litter that, if you throw that into the trash, if that ends up going to the ocean or the bay, that acts just like plastic. It does not biodegrade. So that's another big problem. We have a huge coastline within the county. A lot of people are picking up compostable plastics.
Can you expand a little bit on objective number 3, which is how the county will meet the regional stormwater permit in reducing litter, trash? How is it planned to get this accomplished specifically?
Sure. So I'm going to be honest in that stormwater is not my area of expertise. I do have colleagues in my office that focus specifically on stormwater. But what I do know is that so the county is part of a regional group where we have specific requirements for stormwater. So in order for us to keep our permit to operate our stormwater system, we have to meet specific goals that the state tells us to do. And one of those goals is by July 2022, there has to be either no or little to no litter or visible litter on the street within our streets. And that's not just for the county, it's also for a lot of the cities throughout the entire Bay Area. So it's a San Francisco Bay Area requirement.
So if you can pass on a couple of suggestions, to those people who would be directly working with this particular issue, it would be great if this plan could be clarified, particularly on item number 3, because we certainly have a lot of trash floating around in our neighborhoods, and so some of the things that we need is more trash cans in public areas. And then also perhaps increasing the number of street sweepers, the times that they go around cleaning the streets. And third and final, I think I've seen this program working quite well in some cities here in the Bay Area, but also abroad in other countries where the cities hire, sometimes indigent people, or people who don't have jobs to sweep or clean, pick up trash. And so that generates a few jobs for local people. And at the same time, it really works to keep the streets clean because, the street sweeper can only go so many times before, they get blocked by vehicles. But when people on foot are sweeping the streets and cleaning it, that is most effective. So again, and it's a creation of a few jobs. I've seen some, specifically the city of Palo Alto instituted that. I'm not sure if it was a citywide, but at least on the downtown areas, they had people, on foot cleaning the streets. It was quite effective.
Oh, thank you for that. We'll definitely look into that, and I will pass that on to my colleagues.
Thank you. And I think Rosaura had
Yeah.
a question.
Yes. I have a comment. I think it's very, very healthy to stop using plastic for everyone, but I think also it's going to take a long time to get used to the new knife, new fork and spoon. So I think the community is going to need a lot of education about it, why we need to do this change, and how important is that. I don't know if you are planning to have, some workshops to the community, because it's confusing. Like you explained just before, where exactly in what container we need to put what item that we are using. So, but also I have a question about the food trucks. The food trucks is moved from one place to another place, from one county to another county. How do you gonna regulate that?
So all the food trucks that serve food within the county, they have a permit with our county's Environmental Health Services Division.
Only for the county?
Only for San Mateo County.
Okay.
Yeah. So we know which food trucks is operating within the entire county, but within unincorporated San Mateo County, it's a little bit tricky because we have, as you know, we have pockets throughout the entire county. So we'll just have to do spot checks when we enforce. I agree with you, enforcement for food trucks will be tricky because they do move around.
I think it's going to be a challenge.
It is.
Because in certain area, it's not going to be this ordinance.
Exactly. but then we do have their mailing address there where we share information. So we have been sending them information. So we know that they are receiving information about this, and we let them know that if they are planning on operating within unincorporated San Mateo County, then this ordinance will impact them.
And I'm sorry, but that is all the time we have for this particular topic. I know there are lots of questions, but hopefully this is, there's actually a recommendation that we have to make, but I don't think that even with all the questions, I don't think this has a particular problem. And so I will entertain a motion from council members on this item tonight for recommendation.
Through the chair, would it be helpful if I tried to propose what a motion might look like?
Suggest, yeah.
Please.
So I think it would be a motion recommending that the Board of Supervisors adopt the disposable food serviceware ordinance, or a motion that the Board of Supervisors not adopt the disposable foodware ordinance, food serviceware ordinance.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes. I
ahead,
think I
Rosario.
make the motion to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the disposable food serviceware ordinance.
I second. Oh,
Okay.
you want to
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, no, that's fine. That's what I needed. And I am anticipating an unanimous vote on this one, but if you want to take vote individually, that's fine.
Yes, of course. Okay, Chair Everardo Rodriguez.
Yes.
Vice Chair Beatriz Cerillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Rosario Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Lopez. Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Blair Whitney. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Reese. Youth Member Francis Santos.
And I guess there's no public comment. I should just sneak that in. And it sounds like motion carries. And I thank you very much for your presentation. This is a great project. I hope that it really alleviates some of the environmental issues that we are creating. And just one last suggestion in regards to Rosaura's point about the food trucks. It'll also be to consider the street food vendors that are on food, particularly here in North Fair Oaks, because we have a lot of street food vendors that may or may not be permitted. But they certainly also contribute to some extent, with some of the use of these products. So that would be particularly important to consider for North Fair Oaks, if you can make a note.
Thank you.
But otherwise, thank you very much.
Fantastic. And I forgot to mention that we have 3 public events coming up in June. One is a webinar and 2 is a workshop. One of the workshops is happening in Redwood City on June 19th. So please feel free to attend. We're trying to reach out to as many food facilities in unincorporated San Mateo County as possible so we could obtain feedback. And lastly, you should each have a reusable straw pack in front of you. So this is just kind of a small gift.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, and moving on to the reports. If we have a supervisor's report.
Thank you.
I'll try and make my report less than an hour. Good evening, council members, Chair Rodriguez, County Council, Deputy County Manager Rodriguez, county staff. My name is Irving Torres. I'm a senior legislative aide with Supervisor Warren Slocum, and I'm going to be reporting on behalf of the supervisor tonight. Before I report, I just want to emphasize the ordinance that was just approved or recommended by the council, that maybe the next step to kind of educate is maybe the council members take the initiative of maybe having a meeting with the businesses just to get a sense of how they feel about this ordinance as it gets its way towards the Board of Supervisors. So I want to make that recommendation to the council members to see if you all can take the initiative to maybe organize a meeting with the businesses just to get some comments so that way it can be forwarded to the supervisor. So the only report I have tonight is we're getting ready for our 7th annual North Fair Oaks Community Cleanup. It's going to take place on June 1st at 9 a.m. It's going to be here at the Fair Oaks Community Center. It's a yearly event. It was actually organized by the North Fair Oaks Community Council, a previous council member, Manuel Ramirez, and we've been kind of coordinating this event ever since. And so please encourage all your friends, family, North Fair Oaks neighbors to come and support us at this annual event. So if you want more information, please feel free to reach out to me. You can also give me a call at area code 650-363-4801. And that's all I have to report for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Irving.
Going
to
the chair, there's a question.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Blair.
When's the ordinance going to the Board of Supervisors? July, August?
Yeah, you could go.
Whoever.
Yeah, you can come by to the podium, just so that it's heard, in the.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't address that. So if after the 3 public events in June, and if all goes well, as in there are no significant changes that need to be made to the ordinance, we're hoping to bring it to the Board of Supervisors for review and hopeful adoption at the earliest August.
August. Okay, thank you. The reason I asked is to give us time to figure out if there's a Middlefield Business Association or something we could talk to. All right.
Yeah, it'd be great. I actually just got a text for another announcement. So Mercy Housing is the developer for the Middlefield Junction. They're going to have a community meeting set on Wednesday, June 5th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Sequoia Adult School. And then there's also one on Saturday, June 5th from 10 a.m. to noon, also at the Sequoia Adult School. So I'll probably forward that information to the council if you haven't received that notice.
Yeah, thanks, Irving. And I was just going to say that, it would be great if there's a way that we can start communicating and working with some of the merchants along the Middlefield Road corridor and in general in North Fair Oaks, because I think they're going to be highly impacted by this ordinance. And I think that the better we educate some of these business owners, about the reasons why this ordinance is a good thing for everybody, I think the better they may be able to take it, because obviously there are going to be financial impacts on their side. And it's not always easy to adopt an ordinance when all you realize or all you know is the economic impact that is going to have on you. But if you know that there's going to be an environmental impact, a positive impact, perhaps you're better off, taking some of that heat. So yeah, definitely, I personally will be open to meeting with the merchants, and perhaps we can have a meeting or something that we can plan to discuss that.
Sounds good. Thank you, Council.
Thanks very much for your report. Do we have a county manager's report?
Yes, we do. We heard back also from Mercy, Michael Kaplan. They'll be back in July to present to the council. on the project in Middlefield Road with additional updates. We also met NRT. We're pleased to report that there's been a significant reduction in illegal dumping in the neighborhoods. I think the outreach and the door hanging done by code enforcement seems to have curtailed some of the behavior we were seeing. We'll continue to do that. In your packet this evening, you have the See It, Click It fix. Many of the reporting occurs through that app, and somebody is manning it at the county. You can report bulky items, return furniture, mattresses, shopping carts, all those types of things, loose debris, paint, motor oil, soap, all of it through the app. Also, I wanted to report that we have added the Department of Public Works 2 crew members to the North Fair Oaks area to dedicate services, whether it's mowing the right-of-ways. You may see them around town. They're clearing growth, weeds on the sidewalks, around the light posts, around the trees. So you'll be seeing more of that. And that's the report.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And council members' reports. I suppose I can get started. I have a couple of items in this regard. One was to commend the Bulldog Riders again from the Siena Youth Center for the great work that they did during the health fair bike rodeo that they had at the Hoover School. I think it was a great program that they put together, and they got a lot of free brand new bicycles. I think they gave away like 20 or 25, and it was a really good educational event also for the community to improve their health. So I hope that they get continued support from the county for putting this event together. And the other item was just to commend also Office of Supervisors Locum and everybody who helped to finalize the beautiful mural in the parking lot that we now have, that we have had on display for a while. But the event was well attended, and I think it was a very positive celebration for the community. And if any other members, council members, have reports, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I will invite you to the cleanup that Irving mentioned on June 1st. You could sign up, right? Although you don't have to. If you have the urge, you didn't sign up, just show up. I'm pretty sure that they will utilize your efforts, and they will appreciate your efforts as well. So with that, I think that's it, and we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your help.